He's founded many companies in his time, including Autonomy, which sold for over $11 billion to Hewlett-Packard. He's most recently launched Invoke Capital, which is really challenging the way that private equity and venture capital is done. He has won more awards than I think than anybody I've ever met, and these are just a few of the highlights. Person of the Year by Computer Week, Entrepreneur of the Year by CBI, Top 25 Most Influential Leaders in Tech by Time Magazine, Technology Pioneer of the Year, the World Economic Forum, Top 5 Most Influential People in Tech, Silicon.com, Entrepreneur of the Year by Management Today, and I could go on, but I won't because I'll bore him and I'll bore you. But he's also an OBE, he's a billionaire, and remarkably, he's still very, very humble. I don't know if I'd be that humble after I've achieved all that, but Dr. Mike Lynch, welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Great to have you here. Thank you very much indeed for your time. We normally might just start with, by the way, can I call you Mike or is it Dr. Lynch?
No, I'm Mike, definitely Mike.
Thank you, very kind. Mike, we normally start with a sort of a quick fire round just to get to know our guest a little bit more personally, sort of quick questions, quick answers. And to start with, if you can comment on Richard Tyler's quote from the Daily Telegraph when he said, he's a man of numbers who's labelled as Britain's Bill Gates and who likes nothing better than a pint of beer in his local pub in rural Suffolk. Is that how you like to relax? Is that true?
Well, when you spend all your time in technology during the day, you actually like to get away from it. So I go back to Suffolk where my clocks still go tick-tock and time is a little bit more taken as it comes.
That's right. And is it like a amazing TARDIS of technology at home, or do you try and stay away from the sort of the technology?
No, it's exactly the opposite. So I keep rare breeds, so I have cows that became defunct in the 1940s and pigs that no one's kept since medieval times, and none of them have any Apple products whatsoever.
Fantastic. And then what do you think about, I mean, in the research, everyone that introduces you say that you are Britain's Bill Gates, and how does Mike Lynch feel about that title or that label? Would you prefer Elon Musk or somebody else? What's your...
No, but Bill Gates changed the world. Remember, I'm from the era where when I was doing my PhD, I wasn't allowed to use the PC in the lab. It was that special. And he created a world where we're using IT. So I'm more in the sort of Wayne's World, we are not worthy, rather than particularly worrying about someone more modern.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, Bill Gates is pretty good, right? If we can go back just sort of contextually to understand the early years, Mike. I mean, your father was a fireman, your mother, I don't need to tell you this, but your mother was a nurse. So you had reasonably humble beginnings, and I just wonder if there's anything that they encouraged you to do or taught you that had sort of laid the foundations for you to get to where you are today. I'm a father, and I just like to teach my kids what they taught you, basically.
I think there's a couple of things. So first of all, my father gave me wonderful advice, which is when you grow up, try and get a job that doesn't involve running into burning buildings, and that made sense to me. But also, I think he always regretted that he never had the chance to go to university. And he realised the importance of education, so that was something that was very much sort of fostered in my home. And then there was always, the why. My family were Irish. I grew up in England. And remember, it was a little bit different back then because that was the 70s and the IRA were up to no good. And so you always looked at things slightly differently. You weren't, just following a standard pattern. Yeah. And I think that's very useful when you work in technology because you're always trying to work out why and what's going on rather than just going with the flow. And that lesson itself. So most of the people I work with in technology that are really doing things always have that slight little bit of the outsider about them, which seems to be a big advantage in my area.
Is that why I think the sort of the tag for Steve Jobs came up with think different, because you have to think differently to the way that the status quo is currently?
Yes, and you're about tomorrow being different to yesterday. I don't think there's any randomness in the fact that Steve Jobs was the son of a Syrian immigrant in California. You start realising the world doesn't naturally follow a pattern, whereas I think if you're born as an insider, you assume that's just how everything is.
So Mike, you went to Cambridge University and you weren't exactly flush with cash when you were there, but you wanted to launch a company called Cambridge Neurodynamics. So you were able to do it by getting a loan from somebody. That you managed to persuade somebody to give you £2,000. So tell us the story about how you managed to get that funding early stage.
Well, I was very lucky in that the particular individual that gave me the £2,000 had made a lot of money discovering one of the world's largest rock groups. And by the time I met him, he lived in a Soho wine bar. And he would start carousing, as I think the nice phrase is, and then that process would get to about 4 in the morning, and then he'd repeat. And luckily, by the time I met him, he was well into carousing, and so his due diligence was very quick. And he lent me the money on the spot. And then I had to learn how to run a business starting with £2,000 and not having any formal business training. The great thing about only having £2,000 is you learn what really matters in the business. And so we learned the sort of direct central themes of running a business, and worrying about how you're going to meet payroll at the end of the week is a very sobering approach.
That's right, that's right. Yeah, because what age would you have been when you got that cash? You were...
I was about 23, 24.
23. Yeah. So you weren't tempted to go down to the bar, spend the first £100 at the bar?
Well, I was a real nerd, you see, so I loved all this technology, and I was desperate to build technologies. And you know, one of the great motivators for technical people is about changing the world and also showing your mate that you're cleverer than they and managed to do something. So you know, that was much more the focus than you know, going off down the bar. I
think you've shown a lot of your mates that you're more clever than they are.
There's always new ones coming along who've got even brighter ideas.
That's true, that's true. Are you still in touch with some of your alumni from the Cambridge?
Oh yes, yeah. And they've gone off and done all sorts of different things, you know, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. Very often though, Mike, when you look at a colossal success like Autonomy, you do go back and you find a founder that would just be willing to do anything, that are so obsessed by their business that they'll be willing to do anything. And as you said already, think differently, think creatively, come at it at a different perspective. And I remember I was watching a video of you when you were talking about how you needed a chip for a prototype. Could you just tell that story? You can tell it far better than I can. Can you just share?
Well, I was desperate to build what would now be called a sampling synthesizer, digital synthesizer. And I really wanted one of these. But the problem was that the way I saw to do it revolved around having a chip that was really powerful to make all the music and the sound. And the problem is they were only available for the use in the head end of nuclear missiles at the time, and they're very expensive. So I needed one of these to make a prototype. So I rang up the sales rep and I learned a little bit out how the sales rep works. And rather than asking for one, which I would never have got, the first thing I did was ask them to quote for 10,000. And of course, at that point, the sales rep reaches for the Porsche brochure, thinking that they've made a massive commission sale. But at the end of the conversation, I said, "Can you just send me one for our testing department?" And of course, one nuclear missile somewhere is missing that chip, which I feel very happy about. And it arrived, and we made the system, and then that went on. And of course, they did sell more chips because we made a system. But the comeuppance did come. At the time I was living in a bedsit down by the railway station in Cambridge, and being a PhD in engineering, I used to get up at about 11 in the morning and then work into the night. 10:30 the doorbell went, and there was a whole delegation from this company wearing suits asking for Mike Lynch, and there I was in my dressing gown. And so I just told them I'd never heard of him and closed the door.
Brilliant.
Anyway,
Brilliant.
Not a practice I recommend, but one less nuclear missile in the world and one more synthesizer has got to be a good outcome.
That's got to be fantastic. Yeah, I love that. And sometimes that's what it takes, isn't it? You've got to just think, if I had to do this, what would I do? Some people say, well, we can't do it, we can't, and you just have to think creatively, think differently.
We had a big problem in the early days because we could only afford an office big enough for one person. And the problem is potential customers would come, they'd see the size of the office and they'd say, well, Mike, we love what you're doing, but you're too small a company. And we were saved by the fact that we had a broom cupboard. And so what we did was we made a big sign for the broom cupboard that said authorised personnel only beyond this point. And when people came, we said, well, we'd love to show you the rest of the office, but of course, you'd have to be cleared in advance with your passport and everything.
I love it.
And so we started to get orders. And so now I always like to have an approach where every office we have has a door that says authorised personnel only, and you never know whether it's 100 engineers or it's a broom behind it.
100 engineers with a broom. I love that. That's fantastic. Talking about sort of, what are the characteristics and attributes that have got you so far? I think that clearly your thinking differently is one of them. But for example, The Guardian, for example, said, Lynch is fascinating and an original thinker. Management Today said, Lynch is a hard negotiator and a great communicator, and then went on to say, he is also very tough. You take him on at your peril. If you want to get into an intellectual argument with him, be prepared to get ground into the dust. He'll have you. So that's the management today speak. I'm not going to debate with you
I'm
today.
actually very, very much more approachable and fluffy than that. But
Yeah, I know. But I suppose in a debate, you can be. I mean, you're very clear thinking. I bet when it gets into debate, you could probably knock the socks off anyone. I imagine. Is that?
No, I just like people to. What I don't like is people who say something because it's what's always been said, or who just spout some management book at you. I want them to have thought about a problem.
Yeah.
And actually, as long as you've thought about why you're saying what you're saying, you're not going to have a problem.
Yeah.
Because then you can always explain, well, I think that we should do this because of that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
What I don't like is people that sleepwalk into decisions or do it that way because that's the way it was always done.
Yeah.
That's not my world.
No. Mervyn King, the former governor of the Bank of England we interviewed here, said that during the crisis, the economic crisis, when he was the governor, he had to carve out time for thinking. So in the mornings he'd think, and then in the afternoon he'd be in meetings and do everything else. Is that, knowing the fact that thinking differently is so important, do you somehow, have you tried to turn that into a habit of yours to make sure you spend enough time using the...
It's actually, I think, one of the biggest problems in business today is people aren't, in that sense, spending time thinking. And I actually predate the problem because the problem's driven by things like email. So what happens when people arrive in the office in the morning is they get lots of emails in, and then they think they're working by responding to the emails. And what they're doing is completely reacting to a process. And it's actually like some sort of chain reaction because then everyone responds to those emails. So it's very, very, very important to sit down and just think on your agenda. And some people do it in the bath, some people do it on the bus.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, but it is really important that you're doing that and you're setting the goals. So, the way I like to wake up in the morning is I'll have a think about things, and then I might work out 5 things that really matter that I want to make happen today. And then that's what you do. You only answer the emails at the end if you've got spare time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's turning it round to actually creating the change, not reacting to it.
Yeah. I saw that you said somewhere that you get in and you say, what are the 5 things I've got to do today? And then emails come secondary. And I think you used a great term, I can't remember what it was, where you said there's the false thing about clearing your inbox. You think you've achieved something.
Then you feel good when you've done that. You've achieved something.
That's right.
But no, you haven't.
You haven't achieved.
You haven't achieved anything. It's an illusion.
You've helped them achieve their goals, but you haven't achieved. Yeah.
So, and the problem you see is that this is happening more and more with people just continually reacting to things.
That's
and
right.
That's not what makes a difference.
Yeah. So check it at periodic times, not constantly. What about the work life, Mike? We interviewed Michael Moritz from Sequoia Capital, obviously, and he says that he'd only invest in founders that are obsessed by what they're doing because it does take a disproportionate amount of your time and life. So what about the work-life balance? What's your view on that? In 2012, The Telegraph said Lynch has admitted that he's a workaholic, enjoying the challenge of running a global business from the UK, waking up with Asia, and going to bed talking to a colleague on the West Coast. His laptop sits on his bedside table. So is that true, and do you think that the life out of work-life balance does need to get thrown out the window to have disproportionate results?
I think the whole framing of that is wrong. There's no concept of work-life balance. If you're not enjoying what you're doing at work, that's a problem. So at the moment we have this sort of model that people talk about this as though it's an either or, and you've got to be guilty about failing on both sides. It's not like that. You should be doing something that you actually want to enjoy. You have to make sure you carve out time for things like children, but actually, that doesn't have to be a problem. So one of the nice things that works for technology is I get to deal with my technology here, and then 8 o'clock onwards I get to deal with California, but actually that gives me a nice little slot that I spend time with the children. So I think if you get yourself into that situation where you're worrying about work-life balance, there's something wrong with your life or your work.
Yeah, that's right.
Shouldn't be thinking like that.
No.
And it's a bit like the difficulties that people have now about whether they should be, caring for children or prioritising for work. The two should come together. I'm happiest when my daughter's telling me why the latest app that one of the R&D guys has produced doesn't work, or why it's boring, or whatever. And getting that sort of interaction in things, but set it up as an opposition, and you'll always be under stress.
Yeah, fine. So it's like work-life integration, and I don't want your daughter to go and have a look at our website. I don't want to be up against her. That'd be tough. So we talk about leadership a lot here at LeadersIn, and you've built amazing teams, super smart teams that get disproportionate amount of results, and they've been loyal to you. They've worked for your autonomy, and now they've come over to you at Invoke. So what's the secret of building a world-class team?
It's meritocracy. It's making sure that you look after people by value of their merit. So, now the important thing is understand that can be measured in different ways. You can have a genius software writer and they produce amazing things. Everyone understands that. But actually, you can have a brilliant receptionist who runs reception brilliantly. And what you have to do is tear up all this HR rubbish about level C-4s that get promoted after 2 years and look after the people that do a great job. Yeah. And that then starts to look after itself. Don't allow politics to happen. People be transparent. Actually, they get where they get because of what they're doing. And then working becomes fun. People share the mission. They want to change the world. And it becomes exciting. People come in and they want to make things happen. Now, the difficulty with this is that's easy to do if you build something from scratch, because you can set that culture and then you can keep adding to it. It's much more difficult if you walk into a situation where there's already an established culture, especially if that's a bad culture. So, I'm an expert at building it generally. I wouldn't know how to go in and fix something that was already bad. Yeah,
because how the sort of lightening people up with a sense of purpose. As you said, a lot of organisations don't, if you speak to their staff, they don't know what the purpose is that they're really adding to the customers and to the world. And so it's about creating and getting the purpose out there and making sure management truly recognise not just the stars in the sort of higher profile positions, people at the front desk.
Well, it's usually worse than that, actually. When you get one of these awful companies that's got it wrong, it will actually be a situation where everyone's sort of playing politics. So the person that sticks their head up and tries to achieve something will get it shot off. And then that becomes a self-fulfilling environment, and that's very, very difficult to change. Yeah. What you've got to do is back people, let them make mistakes. Trying something and failing, there's nothing wrong in that. And then looking after people that actually do things very well. Yeah. And there is a counter side to that, which is if there are people there that just don't want to be on the bus, it's better that they get off and they go on a different bus. Because then that means someone who wants to be in that environment and achieve things and have opportunity can take that opportunity.
Absolutely.
So people talk very much about the positive side of it, but it's also important if you've got an environment that's full of a lot of people trying to achieve something amazing. Yeah. If someone doesn't want to be there, they can go and work for a bank or something.
So Mike, if we can put it down to, what's the single best piece of leadership advice you've ever received, do you think?
Well, it's that. It's about finding really good people and looking after them. Lots of corporates think that, as long as they pay to the required salary level, that's looking after them. No, if they're creating value, then there should be no limit on that. Yeah. And so just find those good people, put them around you, and then look after them.
Yeah. Talking about finding good people, you are up against a challenge, I suppose, because you're looking for the most sought-after group out there, and that's the super smart graduates with strong math and data skill sets. So, attracting talent, how can organisations get the best people to come and work for them? What's the secret?
Well, I can cheat because we work on the most amazing things. So you show these people these things and they meet the kind of people working on them, they want to be part of that. But I think the mistake that lots of organisations make is they're scared to make a mistake in hiring. So, they do all sorts of tests and analysis, and the whole goal is not to hire a mistake. Well, actually, the most interesting people are often the most complex people. And I have no problem if someone is a bit strange, but they do amazing things. So a lot of the people I hire, lots of organisations wouldn't, because they would never take the risk. So my model is I'd rather take the risk and get someone amazing. And you may have to work with them a little bit differently, doesn't matter, that's fine. Than sort of go for this absolutely safe, homogenous hire. And if it doesn't work out, then you can act. You can, they can go somewhere else, you can have another go, see if you can find someone. But it's not about not making a mistake.
Right, I love that. I love that. John Moulton said that the wildest successful hires he's ever hired, this is from Better Capital, as you know, the best hires has always been, he'd never sort of got it approved from HR, filling in the tick boxes, you know, he's gone on gut instinct, and as you said.
Well, they'd never hire me for a start.
That's right. I was going to say, I wonder what you'd be doing if you're still at HP selling printers, but they do more than that, don't they? So,
but they'd work.
That's right. But that hiring process is absolutely essential. I think you nailed it there when you said, you know, we've got to show that our organisation is doing amazing things, which goes back to the purpose, doesn't it? And looking at Mike Lynch's leadership style, are you more of a Steve Jobs or a Mother Teresa? Has it changed a lot since the early years of Autonomy?
You're asking the wrong person, but I understand it has mellowed over the years. Okay. But the real art form is actually just having a lot of people around you. The one thing that you still do is you just keep the bar very high. You know, I know some people who work with Steve Jobs, and the one story I love about him is taking the iPod prototype, which was, you know, worth a fortune, and he'd asked them to make it as small as possible, and the engineers all came in, and he picked it up and he dropped it in a fish tank, and an air bubble came out, and he said there's still air inside that. Brilliant. And that's what my role often is to say, yeah, we've just done something amazing, now let's do something incredibly amazing. And the amazing thing about the right people is you give them that challenge and they rise to it.
Yeah. The not so amazing people say it's good enough.
Well, or they come out with 28 reasons why it can't possibly be done.
That's right.
Etc. And no, you can often go a lot further than you thought was possible.
Yeah. So it's just constantly sort of raising the bar, bringing in the fish tanks if you need to.
It's no different to the pride that a 15th century painter had in their work. It's about wanting it to be perfect. Yeah.
And is that, I mean, obviously Steve Jobs was an amazing turnaround CEO, a great founder CEO as well. But a lot of people think, when they think of Dr. Mike Lynch, they think of you as the great academic, the great entrepreneur, tech visionary, but you're also an amazing CEO. Don't forget, you took Autonomy into FTSE 100. You were the CEO of that business for 15 years. You had a significant exit. So looking at the CEO skills of huge companies, not just advice to sort of the small startup companies now, but what advice would you give to CEO of a FTSE 100 company?
It is about the people you have around you, and the biggest mistake people make is they hire people like them. Yeah. The art form is to hire people who are exactly not like you, because they will bring skill sets that are very different, or we would say in the technical world, orthogonal to yours. So, you know, I see this all the time, even with the startups. So, you know, I give lectures at the Judge Institute at Cambridge, and the MBA class will come up afterwards, and there'll be 5 of them, and they're identical, and they'll tell me about their new wonderful company. And it will do something, you know, beautifully presented, but the idea is crazy, you know, toothpasteyourdoor.com or something, right? And you just say to them, 200 yards up the road is the engineering department. There are people in there doing amazing things. They don't look like you. They don't use the words you use, but they're doing amazing things. Now, 2 of you go there and 2 of them come here, and you'll have an interesting company. And so the thing about building the team, which is actually how you get the success, it's not down to one person, is about appreciating that each of us have different things we bring to the party, and trying to get everything in your image is a big mistake.
Yeah, like Steve Jobs hiring Steve Wozniak.
Couldn't be more different, the two of them,
absolutely
could they?
Right. No, if there was a Jobs and a Jobs, maybe we wouldn't have had Apple as. No, I think that's absolutely true. And Tom Peters, who interviewed the US management, he said that very often, even throughout the organisational hierarchy, people go for lunch with the same people every time they go for lunch, and you're not going to learn or get a different perspective on anything. I think that's spot on. But I suppose you've got to be quite secure as a manager to do, you know, to hire. We talk about the mavericks, hiring in those mavericks that could be star performers or disasters, because they will be creative people. So you've got to, it starts with secure leadership. And
yes, and coming back to what we were talking about, culture, you have to have a culture where people appreciate doing a moonshot and failing is a great thing. Because occasionally you hit the moon.
That's right.
Whereas often corporate cultures, as soon as you stick your head above the parapet, it's going to be shot off.
Yeah. Mike, if we can talk about Invoke Capital now, moving on from Autonomy in your early years. You launched Invoke Capital pretty quickly after you sold Autonomy in 2012. So what was the urgency? What was the reason you got it out there so quickly?
Well, when you go around the UK, you see amazing bits of technology. So people often think technology comes from the West Coast. If I go to the West Coast, often the head of engineering is a Brit. Okay. So our science base and our ideas are wonderful in the UK, but what we haven't had is a mechanism to turn those into companies. And because of that, there aren't lots of people running around that know how to do that. There aren't technology marketing experts or whatever. And so what we realized was, my team and I had done this for many years. We've made lots of mistakes. And what we could do is not only bring money to people with amazing technology ideas, but we could make sure they made new mistakes that weren't the ones that we know how to make. And so we realized that there was a special situation in the UK, and what we were able to do is use our knowledge as well as the capital to actually take these things forward. Why, if you're a 24-year-old entrepreneur and you've got an amazing piece of technology, do you need to know how to build a sales force the hard way? Why not just have someone come in and tell you how that's done? That's a solved problem. Yeah. So it's a great opportunity because the science base is so strong. There are so many amazing things going on here. Yeah. And we raised our billion in about 2 weeks. And now I get to go off and do these things. And it's wonderful because I do all the fun bits without all the tedious admin bits. So really good.
Yeah, fantastic. But you were very passionate about it being not just a normal VC PE firm, private equity firm. So how in its essence, is it different? Is it the operational bit that you're just talking about there and the value add?
Well, first of all, normally VC firms, a generalisation, not always true, PE firms are financial people. So the first thing that's very important is to bring in people that actually know how to run a business and operational people. That's a massive plus. Very, very few actually have any scientific or technology background. So, understanding the risks you take in developing products and things like that. So that's the first big difference. We are operational technology people who have all done it before. The second thing is that the way that VC firms and PE firms, so you've defined two things there. So a VC firm does this and a PE firm does that, and then a startup one does this and a mezzanine one does that, and all this sort of stuff. That's all defined by the financial industry. It's got nothing to do with how business should operate. So I wanted to be in a situation where I just do the right thing for the business. So we are happy to invest in a scientist sitting at a lab. We are happy to put 500 million into a company and do anything in between, because the journey of a technology from the first idea to a world-class business goes for all of that. If I was a VC, I have to stop at one point. If I'm PE, I can't start until another point. So we kind of just said, we're just going to use technology and know-how and capital, and we're going to rip up the rest of the rules. Yeah.
It makes me want to go and launch my own business just so I can come to you and try and get it funded.
Yeah.
Because you have, as you say, you've got the best. You've got the team that's been proven before with significant exits, and you've got the technology, the operational know-how, business know-how, the team.
But there are disadvantages. We learned an interesting lesson. So I have my wonderful group that have done all these amazing things and transactions and grown these businesses. And we had people coming in, and then after they do their presentation, they'd leave. My lot would all tell me why it wouldn't work. And they were right. Everything they said was bang on. And this happened a few times, and I said to them, so imagine us coming in here those years ago. Would you invest in us? And they said, well, no. And I said, so we've got to understand that you've got to allow a little naivety in the process. You've got to allow a little sunlight for the seedling to germinate. Because no, you can't have all the answers at the beginning, and there will always be problems. But the easiest way not to achieve something is to never start it.
Yeah.
And so, although we get a lot of advantages, we also have to deal with some things where, when you've seen it all before, you can sometimes be a bit too easy to see the problems.
How have you countered that within your teams? Do you force them to see the positives sometimes?
Yes, one of the easiest ways to do it is you just say to them, right, I only want to hear now about why this could be an interesting idea. Brilliant. And that allows everyone to discuss it and build up the idea. You still have to have the what are all the problems going to be conversation, but by then you've understood why you might want to do this.
Right.
So you kind of be a little sort of paradoxical, but you kind of have to separate it out.
Brilliant. So it's a little like Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats. You you put on the various hats of thinking, and
Yeah.
you play them out. But your decision to invest more broadly into a portfolio, was that an important sort of development for you versus focusing on being the boss of one company?
Well, no, I get, it's like, rather than, I don't know, playing with one beautiful car, you got 10 to play with. So, no, I get to do all the fun stuff. One day I'm in with the genetics people, another day I'm with artificial intelligence people.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, the entrepreneurs are the ones that are doing the real magic.
Yeah.
We're just making sure they make those new mistakes.
Yeah, brilliant. How's that transition been, though, from being the CEO to almost nurturing these CEOs and businesses? Because I know you don't run your portfolio autocratically, so how's that transition been? I mean,
well, you have to explain why. So the problem you've got is when you've done it before, it's very obvious to you. One of the things that sometimes people will come in with is that they'll have an idea of how business works. Mm. But the problem is most of those ideas come from GE Capital or from Ford, and they're not relevant in a tiny little company. So, for example, a CEO might say to you, I really need to do this because it's really important. And you say, well, actually, in a company this size, you don't. No. And as long as you get a good relationship with the entrepreneur and they start to listen, pretty soon they start to value what you're saying. And then occasionally they'll decide that you're wrong. Right. And you let them run with it, and they either fall over and learn something, or you learn something, one of the two. But
therein lies the difference, I think, because you mentioned earlier about you've got to have a CEO that allows people to fail. And you just said that you would allow that, and that takes that's a great leadership trait, tick, I think, Mike.
Well, you tell you, if you've got a good person, after they fail, you tend to end up with a slightly better one.
Right, so. Yeah, absolutely. So the first 3 years of Autonomy, not Autonomy, Invoke Capital is now 3 years old. How has it been? You always talk about, you've got to constantly reinvent the business plan and the plan. Have you had to be agile? How's it been going?
Well, we've been very lucky. We've had, we've done the sort of stock Aitken and Waterman of the hits. We did one called Darktrace, which is machine intelligence and cybersecurity. Yeah. That started in August 2013. That's growing at 600% and is just getting valued at 400 million. Nice. Now, actually, that's growth I've never seen in my career before, so I'm learning new things as well.
Yeah,
but that's a really nice one. We've got another
congratulations for that.
Yeah, another one which is in genetic testing to do with things like treating cancer, and that's now gone from treating 0 over 2 years to treating 25,000 patients. And not only is that one a great business, but it's also really nice to think that you're doing something that actually can have such an impact. Yeah. And it's a new area for me, so I've learned a lot in doing that. Then you have ones which are a little bit more predictable. So we've got one which is about artificial intelligence replacing things like very low-level law jobs where people are just turning handles and doing that sort of stuff. Yeah. Not perhaps as exciting as the first two, but a good solid business. Yeah. And then we get to play with all these amazing things like augmented reality and virtual reality and machine vision and things like that. Yeah. And that's an interesting one because there's no business there at the moment. Right. You just see amazing technologies, but you just know this stuff's going to change the world. Yeah. So you have to analyse it on that basis. Yeah.
No wonder you're still continuing to work despite your wealth. Why wouldn't you be? You're changing the world. You're making the world a better place, and you're having a lot of fun as you're doing it.
Well, you see, the problem is, I could not have conceived when I started of what technology would allow now. That chip that you might use to make a synthesizer back when I started, it was the most powerful chip on the planet. You can now do that in a free app on an iPhone. Right. So what that means is that the possibilities are amazing, and I really need to lose some weight to make sure I live long enough to see what all of this becomes.
So do I. Talking about your business philosophy, if you do 1 minute of research on you on YouTube or anywhere else, you see you're a man of beliefs and firm convictions on the way business should be done in your way, and you recognise that there's different ways of getting point B, but to point B. But for example, the one of the things I note is that you're always you say I'm deeply skeptical about companies that are comfortable running at a loss, and very often people think it's the cool new thing to be running at a loss, and you've got to go and get market share. And has your philosophy on that changed? What's your opinion on the whole sort of grabbing the market versus making revenue and profit?
I'm deeply sceptical because somehow in those businesses people forget to do the making profit eventually bit. And there can be cases where it's a good argument, but it's a very dangerous game because suddenly sentiment changes and you can't get funding for your loss-making business. But also the business culture becomes like a couch potato. It loses its direction. And remember, my approach to life is there are 5 things to do each day. It's very hard to do that if you're wasting vast amounts of money internally. You'll do 100 things. So no, I'm still pretty sceptical. I'm prepared to accept that it might take a lot of money to develop a new drug or something, but software, which is a business where 99% margin, if you can't make money in software within the first couple of years, you're probably doing something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned there's a lot of companies out there, and there always will be, but how did you decide specifically where to put your investment?
Well, first of all, I like things that have an unfair advantage. So the phrase I use is always take a gun to a knife fight, and in technology terms you do that by having something which is so much better than what's out there. Lots of people make the mistake of doing a Me Too. I've created a great new social media site, Well, no, I can't handle that one, someone else has to do that one. So first of all, big advantage. And then the question, what areas? Well, actually, by the time there's some new concept in tech that everyone's talking about, it's too late. So what you've got to do is actually go back to the roots. And the roots come from, first of all, what can technology now do it couldn't do before? But most importantly, people. And that takes you back to humanity and history, So, for example, one of my biggest bets that came off in the past was looking at the rise of technology and all these electronic emails and documents and everything, and then understanding the legal system dating back to the Romans, which was about taking all this evidence out and the judge looking at it. Well, you can't throw away the legal system and keep civilization, yet the technology's got to deal with all of this. Suddenly you realise there's going to be this big new area of handling all this information, and you can do an investment. So some of the areas I like at the moment, for example, the cybersecurity, because it's a great unsolved problem. People think about building a big wall around businesses to protect them, but every morning you allow everyone in anyway. So you've got to do it differently. And then you look at things like the breakthroughs in genetics, which means, take something like cancer, where a tumour, lung cancer is 10,000 different diseases. At the moment, the oncologist has to guess. Well, if you can do the right tests, you can work out exactly how to treat that. So these are the kind of things that are very, very exciting. And then, why do we type words into computers? It doesn't make any sense to me. Why do we have screens? When you see what can now be possible with augmented reality, where we can be looking at stuff and suddenly something looks perfectly real, it's not there. That's the digital world, seamlessly melded into the physical world, so the two are no longer separate. That's going to change everything.
Mate, there's 2 things, having done quite a lot of research about you, looking at some of the lessons I'm sort of trying to take away from the research on you, and that is, number one, you're a man that believes, yes, you should create great IP, but you also need to sell the thing. Give you an example, here's a quote from Computer Business Review, when he said, the biggest thing we at Invoke have to explain when we go and see a company is that it is about sales and revenues. We are unashamedly nerdy techies here. We love stuff that is different, but that's irrelevant if they're not going to create a sales operation. The example of an Oracle or a Salesforce is that they are the absolute personification of running a sales operation. So why do you think people forget that?
It's very easy. You're creating this amazing product. It's your baby, and you sit there and you think you know exactly what you want to do, and you're always going to sell it one day, and then you bring it out, you show it to customer, and it's not what they want. Well, it's too late then. Yeah. And of course, the one thing about selling is you're actually finally testing your idea. Your dream is becoming a reality, and it's a lot more comfortable for people, whether they admit it or not, to keep in the dream. I'm still developing it. But the important thing is that if you want your idea to have impact, it's got to get out there. And that's why you have to actually do the selling part of it.
Right.
And selling is a brutal thing because you fail. You go out, you try and something, you fail. Your product turns out it's got a problem. So you have to go through that fire.
Yeah.
And some people just don't want to do that. And they
Right.
think that they can go along to entrepreneur conferences and call themselves entrepreneurs without having to go through that pain. Well, no, you have to do that if you want to really make something happen.
Yeah, yeah. Ed Ray, founder of Betfair, said that the one thing that they did is they just got prototypes, put it out to the marketplace, not afraid of failure, not afraid of sort of better done than perfect is some of the mantras they have at Facebook. So getting stuff out there, getting feedback. I suppose you only really find out if people like it if you're trying to get money off them.
Well, more importantly, I've never seen a company end up doing what it started doing. So the idea that you're not going to learn from the customers, that's what you have to do. And quite often you thought you were doing this, and then suddenly the customer says, I don't need that, but if you could do this.
Yeah.
And so, one of the big problems you have when people get an investor in is they produce a wonderful plan of what they're doing, but actually the cleverest thing to do, perhaps 3 months on, is to do a U-turn.
Right.
And you've got to have the strength to explain, I know I took all that money off you a few months ago, but actually, I really think we should do this now.
Yeah.
And that's very, very important because the world changes, but you learn from your customers.
Brilliant. So have that conversation with the investor 3 months after the check's in, not the day before the check's in.
Yeah,
Otherwise
that's a good point.
That's
Yes. Which brings us on to marketing, another great issue. So, too many UK tech companies think that marketing is cheating. They would love to believe that the world's best mousetrap will win. And the reality is no one will take any notice. And so what you often find in tiny little UK companies is a sense of outrage. They know their product is better than the competitors. But somehow the competitor's still selling. Well, the competitor's still selling because they do marketing. It's not cheating. And even in Silicon Valley, the great successes are always the ones that have a great product and great marketing.
Yeah.
And so we have to accept that even if you're a technology person, you need to go and find one of those people that's very not like you, that knows how to do marketing, and then you can be successful.
Yeah. Do you think sort of the whole brand and brand equity in the social media age is even more important than it was in the past? Or do you think it's always been equally as important?
I think it's, in technology, I can only talk about technology, I think it's very important because some of these things are so complex to understand or test that actually customers don't test them. And so if you can get the brand to the point where it's perceived as being very good, and that's easiest to do when it is very good, then actually that's very important. So the brand can matter a great deal in technology because no one has the time or the ability to test this stuff.
Let's talk about a brand that everybody watching this would have heard of, and that is Apple. When Steve Jobs passed away, it was a terrible loss for the world and humanity, and people did think the Apple share price was going to tumble and that was going to be it. But if you were in Mr. Cook's shoes over at Apple, what can companies like that do to make sure they maintain that challenger mentality to drive forward and continue to be great? Or will they at some point always inevitably come off a cliff?
Well, what's been happening recently is that companies have really understood the difficulty of always having a hit. So, you can imagine that we have the iPhone 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Will 7 be a hit? Will 8 be a hit? Will 9 be a hit? Well, actually, you can be pretty sure that at some point they won't be a hit. And so the really clever companies, what they do is they take their hits and they use it to create a situation where even when their next product isn't a hit, they're still very valuable. And that is about data. So what I would expect Mr. Cook to be desperately trying to do would be, through his very successful products up to now, get to a point where, through things like iCloud and Apple Music, we're so tied in to Apple devices that even when the iPhone N is actually not really that good, the cost of switching to us is too much hassle, it's too woven into our lives. So technology people are often looking for how, if you like, the great product, the great idea is the booster rocket that gets you up there. But then you have to work out how you don't fall back to earth when that's gone. So it's very naive to assume you're always going to have a hit. So companies like Facebook or Salesforce.com have become kings in understanding that by getting the data, they hold a valuable future and get an unassailable position. So if I was Mr. Cook, That's what I would be spending all night thinking about.
I'll make sure we send this over to him so you can get the right Lynch advice. You mentioned future there. Let's talk about future for a second. Sir Ronald Cohen did write a book from Apex Partners, wrote a book called Second Bounce at the Ball. Premise being we're making money in today's market, and the companies that are going to be doing well are the ones that can align themselves to the next bounce of the ball. So predicting where that bounce is going to be. You've got a great habit of spotting trends earlier. Quote, Autonomy was working in the cloud before it was the cloud. Autonomy created a search business before we'd heard of Google. Your portfolio, as you've already highlighted, is Uber future. So how can we identify or have a sort of a finger on the pulse of what's coming up next?
Well, first thing you look at is in my field, you look for things that aren't possible today that will be possible tomorrow technically. Okay, and the reason I like those are obviously suddenly something's changed, but also generally those things are very difficult to do, so you can't just replicate them. Not everyone will be able to do it. But the second one is always comes back to people. You know, what are people like? Well, you know, when you're in San Francisco and you suddenly see that the 20-somethings, none of them are from San Francisco, but raw animals that are used to living in a social hierarchy. Well, you can start to see social media and the need for it, and how we recreate the village, or you know, you look at the vast amounts of electronic documents, the need for the legal system to work, the e-discovery market. Now these things are all obvious in retrospect, but if you really want to understand things, read your Shakespeare, because that's about people. That's about their loves and their fears and their hate and their greed. Those haven't changed. In fact, there's a wonderful quote from a Harvard biologist called Edward Wilson. And he says that we have the emotions of the Paleolithic, we have the institutions of the medieval, and we have the technology of the gods. And the opportunities come where those three meet. The emotions are still the same. We can still feel like we need to belong. The institutions, like the legal system or the banks or whatever, are out of date. And the technology, well, that's of the gods.
Right. That's brilliant. So what trends do you see then on the horizon, looking at the sort of the raw human elements of you've just described there, but from the technological solutions perspective to those human needs, what major trends do you see on that? I mean, you said recently we're going to see a whole new world of how we interact with information, for example, and the main thing is computers are starting to understand meaning. What does that mean, and how do you think what other trends do you see out there 5-10 years?
Well, there's a series of things coming together. We're at a time of incredible change because so many enablers are coming together. Perhaps the most obvious one is machine intelligence. Now this is a revolution, just as the Industrial Revolution was a change. We had the IT revolution, which was about computers doing very simple, repetitive, simple things, like calculating a payroll. Now we're actually seeing intelligence in the machines. It's finally here. And that is going to change our world in incredible ways. Not only will we end up with things like driverless cars, but a lot of the tasks we do today will become automated by the machines. But the machines don't sleep, they don't get bored, and they can read 1,000 times faster than we can. So it is going to change what is possible in our world. Things look very different, and that's a lot of opportunity. It's some threat as well. Other areas are information. You know, we will see soon devices the size of a millimetre cube that can see and hear and be connected. And that means that there's going to be vast amounts of information everywhere. And then how we use information. So at the moment, it's crazy. You go to a keyboard, you type stuff in, you go to a search engine, you get words. No, information should be things. You know, we'll be wearing devices where we sit in a room and some of the objects won't be really there. They will just be information. You know, you get a bottle of wine and, you know, put it on the table, a little bloke will walk out and tell you where it was grown and why it's wonderful. The wine's real, the bloke isn't, but you won't be able to tell the difference.
So is that something you're wearing in your eye, or is that...
Well, there's a whole series of technologies being worked on at the moment, so things that will do direct write, but that's almost irrelevant. You know, that's kind of the enabling block. Once that arrives, though, the fundamental thing is how the digital world, which we now see as separate, becomes completely melded in with the physical world. You know, very simple example of this is, you know, I might want to look up a phone number. Well, you know, the normal analogy for that would be, well, a Rolodex could appear with the number on it on the table. Right. That's very easy. But then imagine that technology that you can put anything anywhere, and get a bottle of water and a goldfish can appear in it. It's very hard to explain, but the simplest analogy for this, you ever seen those Harry Potter films?
Yeah, yeah.
We're talking about that world.
Right. So is it an exciting world, a threatening world?
Well, it's incredibly exciting because you're no longer limited by your physical where you are. You're no longer limited by the laws of gravity. And your creativity is just boundless now. You can create anything because you can take non-existent digital things and make them a reality around you. So we are about to enter an incredibly exciting period.
Yeah, fantastic.
And that's why I need to live long enough to see all of this.
Yeah. Well, it's also good, as you say, for entrepreneurs, because it's sort of an economy that's not volatile, not changing. It's not good for entrepreneurs, and particularly not good for tech entrepreneurs, right? So it's a good time. But for
It's more than that. It's not good for the status quo. It's not good for the systems and the people that have controlled us.
Yeah.
In terms of evolution, we're a blink of an eye away from feudalism.
Right.
And we're now controlled by institutions and power in a way that's not going to be there anymore. And that is opportunity for everyone.
Yeah. I know Google is talking about trying to make the whole thing of immortality, take that off, aging as a problem to solve. Do you think we're gonna get there at one point?
It's interesting. I think there's a very different view in different cultures about this. I'm much more at home with the concept of the arc of human existence.
Right.
Okay. I think that arc is a very special thing. I'm not sure that actually immortality is a goal to be going after.
Right. Okay.
One of the things that worries me about the digital age is about how everything, you're going to soon be able to record everything you do. But actually, I quite like the idea that there's uncertainty. I like the idea that someone looking at someone's past and the life doesn't know. So I delight in the fact that my Wikipedia entry has errors in it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want everything to be perfect. I want there still to be those wonderful gaps through which our creativity exists.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Exactly. It becomes more fragile and more important then, doesn't it?
And more deep and more subtle.
Yeah.
Imagine when you have a recording device and you can go back and you can replay any conversation or row you had with anyone, or all those stupid things you did when you were younger. It is good that they slip into oblivion.
That's right. That's right. Let's talk about privacy. Is the genie out the bottle?
I think it's gone. Get over it.
Yeah.
And actually people have, although there's this very academic conversation about it. It's amazing how little you give people for them to give up their privacy as long as you construct the experiment the right way.
Yeah.
People now are very happy to have recorders on their car if they lower the insurance premium. And that's something that's recording everywhere you're driving and how you're driving. I think there was a wonderful experiment in an American university with teenagers basically could work out the price of giving up all their personal information. It was $2.17. So this is a debate where we have a sort of theoretical ideal and we have the reality of as soon as we get something for it. And the reality is there can be a lot offered for it. So the basic idea has to change about what we mean by privacy.
Yeah, and related to that, regulation. I mean, very often regulation lags technology, but it slows it down. Is it going to need to keep up in this fast, dynamic, changing world we're about to get into?
The implication in your question is that regulation's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's not.
No.
And in fact, in this world, when computers can trade much faster than any human could even think about, yes, you better have regulation. But the worrying thing is you're going to have to let the machines do the regulation because they're the only things that can keep up with the machines.
Right.
So the very thing we're worried about is going to have to be policed by the very thing we're worried about. So it's going to be an interesting dilemma in the future.
And just getting off tangent for 1 second, is there going to be a need for humans in the future? I mean, is that sort of a apocalyptic thing where robots take over the world? Is there a chance of?
I think there'll always be a need for humans because people don't realise what humans do that is so impossible for machines to do. Because it comes so naturally to us. It's that creativity of linking things. Machines just cannot do that in the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
So we will spend more time doing what we as humans do that's different. The funny thing about the whole sort of Terminator apocalypse vision is actually the failure mode is so much more banal. I really liked the Tay chatbot from Microsoft. Incredible technology, put online, learns from interacting with people on the internet. A week later, you know, it's a Nazi sex-crazed lunatic. You know?
Absolutely. Not representing the Microsoft brands.
Well, this is and the problem is, actually, it did exactly what we asked it to. It learned, and the problem we have there is, when we don't like what we see in the mirror, do we blame the mirror? It just did what it was supposed to, and we will get a lot more of that. The threat from these kind of machines is more, they're like the genie in our childhood stories. They will do exactly what we asked them to do,
right?
And that won't be what we wanted them to do.
Yeah, but is it going to take it? Are they going to take over white-collar jobs? I mean, are the people doing interviews like this better
No,
off
I think
by
you're absolutely safe.
okay.
Yeah,
That's fine.
you're safe. Well, Deloitte recently produced a report, 35% of professional services jobs were at threat. The Americans have produced a very negative analysis of that. We in Britain are more optimistic because we believe that, you know, if you had that conversation in 1968 about the IT industry, you'd have seen all the purchase ledger clerks that were going to lose their job, but not the hordes of IT consultants we would now have. So what I do think it means is that there will be disruption, there will be a need to retrain people, and there will be different skills that are needed. So it is going to be a big effect, but I'm not sure it's a negative one.
Mike, if we can just change tone now to something far less inspiring, perhaps, and that's the legal action with HP has been going on for 3 years now. Can you just give an update as to where we're at with all this noise?
Well, there's a legal case going on. It's moving at a glacially slow speed. The fascinating thing about it has been what the legal case has thrown up a series of revelations, which actually show that all the key things that HP said they didn't know, they knew. And they've had to admit that now. So, you know, it's something that sort of rather like Dombey and Sons will trail on for a long time, but it's not something that takes up much of my time.
Okay. Well, how do you make sure that it doesn't? Because I know that you know, a legal case, it can become like a cloud over somebody from a sort of a business person. They're just trying to get on with their life, trying to create value in the world, and they've got this cloud that keeps following them. So has it been disruptive for you, I suppose?
Well, when Hewlett-Packard made its accusations, it then tried everything it could do once it realised it had made a mistake to not answer them. And so it's been, you know, it took years to actually do anything. Only when its shareholders started to sue it did it sue us, and then it's been doing it so slowly. We've actually had to demand that it gets speeded up. You know, basically, as far as we're concerned, come on, bring it on, let's all see the facts. But because it's going so slowly, it doesn't take much time. More importantly, anyone in business knows you can't own a business for a year, there being no cash missing, and then cry foul. So that's why we had no trouble raising $1 billion from people in 2 weeks, because people know that that thing was crazy. The one thing, it's sad, is that actually the people that acquired Autonomy and HP had a real vision. And in the regular sort of coup d'etats that went on at HP, they got pushed out, and the people that took over were people that had no vision and were just corporate suits. And that's a shame, because actually amazing things could have happened if that technology from Autonomy had actually gone forward with the original people rather than getting caught up. It's a bit like walking into a domestic dispute, really. You know, you're the innocent guy and they're all fighting. Yeah. And eventually you can't help it, but you know, someone throws a punch in your direction. It's rather sad.
Absolutely. No, it's particularly sad. It was your baby and you created it in Cambridge.
Well, the great news though is that because they screwed it up so badly and everyone left, those people have all gone out. A lot of them are back working with me on new amazing things. The ones that aren't have gone and started their own businesses. So ironically, it may turn out to be a great thing for the UK.
Mike, you've spent a lot of time with us today. I just want to say thank you for that. Just one last topic, if we can, and that's good old Britain. I know that you went to China with George Osborne once on a sort of mission out there, and so you've seen the work ethic of China and some of those other emerging markets. Do you think, with the work ethic out there, that and the brilliant brains that are out there too, that Britain's got a chance long term against those players?
Britain's definitely got a chance. We're one of the most entrepreneurial, creative nations in history. Take Brunel forward. We just have to be realistic. I look at the news today, and there's people complaining because their children are getting tested at school. And then you go to South Korea, and you see the amazing achievement in high school maths there, for example. And you just think, come on, people, get serious. We have to raise standards in the modern world. Maths is really important. Once we do that, we have all the creativity that we've always had as a nation, and we can be very successful. But we can't bury our heads in the sand. Our children are incredibly talented, they're incredibly capable. Yeah. Let's not fail them by setting the bar too low.
Yeah. I mean, you talked about your daughter checking some of the engineers' works so far in this interview. Would you recommend all kids going in doing maths, engineering, data, computer science?
Well, the chance to do whatever they're interested in. If they want to write poetry, that's fine by me. Yeah. I think, though, that actually most children would enjoy coding if they got the chance. And there's been some wonderful charities now that are going around schools giving kids the chance to code. And you know what? Kids love it. Yeah. Because it's actually about problem solving. Kids love, Have you ever seen them on Minecraft, what they build? Yeah. That's because you gave them the opportunity. That's no different to coding. Okay. So it's a great thing to do, but there's nothing wrong with doing other subjects as well.
Brilliant. Okay. And what do you think is the current state of exits in Britain? How are we faring on the exit front?
Well, when you actually look at what's happened in the technology sector, we've done an amazing thing in that we've managed to get an incredibly vibrant startup community. There's a lot of government work at the moment about how we make sure those scale. So Seri Kuti did a very good report for the government on scale-ups. The big issue now is how do we stop our amazing companies being sold when they're worth 150, 200 million and get them to actually become world class. Yeah. And that's where we need to make the London Stock Exchange work better for those companies. And so that's the work that's going on now. So it's a very high class problem to have.
Yeah. God loves high class problems. You're linked to government. I mean, you went to China with George. But what's your opinion on Brexit versus Brexit? I'm sure you've got a lot of other opinions and everything else. I'm sure you're opinionated on this one.
Well, first thing is, isn't the quality of the debate so sad? You've got self-serving politicians on both sides that I'm sure don't believe half the things they're saying, jockeying for position. You have, emotionally charged but irrelevant things being thrown into the fray on both sides. So the first thing is, I think it's very sad, the level of debate that we have. It's a really important question. For me personally, I think it would be lunacy to leave. And the reason is I've sat in rooms where overseas organisations have made decisions about where they're going to put a factory or where they're going to invest in an R&D centre. And at the moment, they think about, should it be Holland, should it be Britain? It's never going to be Britain if we're outside the EU. They just will not do that. Another simple example, a consortium bidding to build, an airport in Germany or something. No one's going to put a British company in that consortium if you don't know whether there's going to be a tariff on the British contribution, because it will raise the price of the bid. So these are very real examples where there will be very significant impact on inward investment and business in the UK. And what people don't understand is, if you're a Halifax hairdresser or a pizza shop, it doesn't really matter. But all it has to do is affect 5% of our companies badly, and people will stop coming into your shop and buying pizza because they won't have a job. So people have to understand only a small amount of damage will actually upset the UK economy, and we're in a position now that for all of its failings, it works, and we do not want to go through the uncertainty. If you said to me there was a guaranteed wonderful sunlit upland that we could get to by doing this, I still wouldn't do it because of the pain getting from here to there. But even that's not guaranteed. So just think, you're an American, you're a Korean, you're Japanese, you're working out where you're going to build your factory or where you're going to put your R&D centre. Why would you do it in the UK if we left Europe?
Great. I'll send that clip to Boris Johnson, so maybe we can swing his opinion. final question. You're a man of great wealth, intellect, capability. You can do anything you want to in the future. What are you going to be doing? What are your priorities? What are your interests and your drivers going forward?
I think it still comes back to the same ones I had when I was 19. You know, you want to see the world being different and better tomorrow than yesterday, and if you can do a little bit of that, that's a great thing. So, you know, when you look at something like, for example, the Crick Institute here in London, the most incredible bunch of scientists being brought together to crack problems like cancer, it's the most exciting place in the UK. You know, that's something that I want to make sure that that kind of thing can happen in the UK. The Turing Institute, which is a sort of equivalent for artificial intelligence, things like that. Yeah. And then the other thing is, having battled through it, I'm a great believer that our talented people, no matter what their background is, should have opportunities to get the best education and then use those skills. And then we have amazing talent in the UK. Let's make sure that the institutions that are stopping that talent turning into impact change.
Brilliant. I hope one day that Bill Gates gets coined as the Mike Lynch of the United States. On behalf of everybody watching today, Mike, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your wisdom that you shared today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.